might think that torture devices were a thing of the past, a medieval relic from the darkest depths of human imagination. Well, you're wrong, because I've got 3 of the worst right here. These put the rack to shame, honestly. Yes, welcome to the bizarre world of Tiger and Grandstand in the late 80s and early 90s. A time when most of us had to make do with Tiger handhelds for portable gaming, especially when an Atari Lynx cost you £179. These little LCD devices were fine for a bit of amusement, but that's about as far as they went. You weren't going to be throwing your Master System out and replacing it with a set of Tiger games. But Tiger thought otherwise. They thought that their marketing machine was so good that they could have the audacity to package Tiger handheld games up into tabletop experiences and get away with it. They even had the balls to sell them side by side like some kind of sick collection. Not only that, but they'd use half of the world's plastic in the process. Let's start with this culprit, the Outrun electronic LCD game. Now, you may note the Grandstand name on the box, and that's because this is the UK release of this Tiger monstrosity. By the year of its release, 1989, Grandstand were well and truly established as the electronic toy importer and distributor for our little island. And they didn't just dabble in tabletop games either, they splashed their name over Tiger handheld models and brought them to our shores too. So in your region you might find this branded directly as Tiger or a different local importer. Now this was actually the cheapest of this trio, priced at around £35 in the UK, about the same price as a decent Master System game. So what other insights can we gather from this somewhat tatty box? Well, it's got super sound, apparently, a realistic steering column and controls, and it of course is based upon the Sega arcade game. Not entirely sure why tabletop is in inverted commas. I mean, does it not actually go on a tabletop? I don't know. But it also has a large LCD screen, apparently. Large, remember that, and smart car body styling. A quick flick through the manual yields nothing really of note. I mean, it's a Tiger game. And here it is in all its glory. Look at the size of that screen. Look, it's massive. I mean, this is where you realise just how ridiculous these things are. Look at all this plastic, all these controls, these stickers, wheels, that whole bonnet, more stickers, all of that for this tiny LCD screen, the same size LCD as you'd find on a Tiger handheld. I mean, come on, come on! 2 AA batteries power the LCD component of this hulking slab, whilst 2 C batteries provide power for those extra inputs and features, one of those being that super sound. Oh yes, you won't get these kind of sounds on the handheld, which incidentally is exactly the same game otherwise. But only here can you get that full driving experience. Immediately the timer is ticking and we're into the action. The gear stick provides us with high and low gears, as well as a brake. They're not gears in the traditional Outrun sense, it's really just 3 different speeds, so we can drive off in high gear, no issue. Then our half steering wheel, although being analog in styling, inputs digital commands to our little Ferrari. This is an interesting thing because given you have to move the wheel 45 degrees to the left or right, you lose the reaction speed you'd find with traditional controls. You're not really gaining anything other than a sense of realism that only a 9-year-old could appreciate. And to be fair, my cousin had one of these and I thought it was the dog's bollocks, frankly. Although it's not the easiest of LCD games to get used to. I mean, corners, they're a thing. And when they occur, your car will just start drifting to the opposite side of the screen. And you have to steer. And then you have to judge when the corner is ending exactly, otherwise you'll start veering over to the opposite side of the road and potentially hit a car. It's a bit weird, you get used to it, but it's potentially tricky, especially for a small child. After each timed level, we get a fork in the road, just like normal Outrun, which you can navigate by moving to the right or left. You're then thrust into the next level. And yes, there are 15 tracks, just like Outrun, not that you'd be able to differentiate one from another in this case. Any time you have saved from the previous round also carries over, so, you know, it's got the basic features down. And I mean, from a certain point of view, this looks amazing. So many controls and coloured panels, but it's so bloody absurd. And it's the fact that it's literally just a handheld game which gets to me. I mean, there are other tabletop games, but most of those have larger, more colourful displays, sometimes vacuum tubes or other methods that make the whole thing more of a spectacle. This is just, well, this. An infernal noise box, which thankfully has an off button, and some chunky controls thrown in for good measure. At least Tiger went to the effort of putting a plastic radiator under the bonnet. I guess that's nice. But even with all that, it's not as bad as this one. Yes, it's Afterburner. Tiger was so proud of this one, they even had a TV advert for it. An advert that showed as little actual gameplay as possible, but put lots of powerful effects in to make you think it was really something special.
Gun or missiles. Lock on. Enemy in sight. Fire. 18 stages of play make Afterburner a true test of a skilled jet fighter.
Where do we begin? Well, again, this is the Grandstand model released in the UK in 1989, but you can find this in the United States, again published directly by Tiger. There's also a version without Sega branding distributed by Yeno and called Super Fighter. This version has slightly different graphics to differentiate it from the Afterburner series. You can expect to grab this one for about 38 quid. Anyway, this version is the same as the Tiger Afterburner handheld model, but with a few additions. The first is clearly this joystick, attempting to mimic a fighter jet cockpit. It moves left and right, but with no vertical operation. The top button fires missiles for targets which are locked, whilst the front trigger fires machine guns for those directly ahead. To the left is a thrust lever. It has 3 settings which are tied to the plastic indicator above. Now, the ability to change your speed is actually something absent from the handheld, but it doesn't actually do much other than make the bottom of the screen scroll faster. To our right is a damage indicator. When you die, this lights up. That's all it does. Sound is now provided by a slightly beefier loudspeaker as opposed to a piezo thing, and we get the power button just above it. The artificial horizon sadly does nothing. Much like all these stickers, they again look the part, but they're just plastic tat, designed to enthrall the young mind. And once again, they did just that. I mean, look at all these bits. It looks quite incredible. It's again a case of the whole is less than the sum of its parts. One thing missing is the LCD background, found on the handheld. Instead we get a flashing light right in the middle of the screen. This activates when you destroy a plane directly in front of you, which is quite nice. It's actually one of the better LCD games, mimicking Afterburner's gameplay about as well as you could hope for. Planes swoop from all sides. When they get a box around them, you can fire a missile and it should hit them. When one is straight, you can blow it with your machine guns. And when they go off the screen, well, you can swoop left and right a bit yourself. I know I said these were torture devices, but it's not all that bad. And if you get into it, well, you have to give Tiger credit for once again creating something that looks great, especially in a catalogue, but in reality is just a slab of tat. And so, on to the final member of this trio. The average, the over-engineered, and the frankly flipping obscene. Now, this is the most expensive, clocking in at about £45, but then it is a tie-in with one of the biggest and best movies of 1989, and it's therefore somewhat special. Yes, this is the Batman electronic LCD game, again with super sound. Control the Batmobile in an exciting 99-lap race. What's left of the box reveals a dashboard layout pretty similar to Outrun, but this is a very different beast, and you'll see why. Yes, with that whopping bonnet, this thing is exactly the same length as an original Amstrad CPC. That's 23 inches, not including the steering wheel. And I have to commend them. The standout feature of Michael Keaton's Batmobile was the huge flowing length of bonnet, like a Jaguar E-Type on steroids, and that has truly been captured here. Underneath, it's just the same as Outrun, sans the plastic wheels. Instead, we get the wheels as part of the moulding, which makes sense. I mean, you can't really build wheels into the frame when they need to be over there. Thinking about it now, it's actually strange they weren't like this on Outrun. Certainly would have been cheaper to manufacture. The cockpit is very familiar to the Ferrari, but with a new set of stickers relevant to the Batmobile. This actually feels more suited for the Batmobile, to be honest. This layout of the steering wheel, it just fits in that context. It's also a different game to Outrun. You might think they just port it and tweak the visual components, but we have a different background, a different layout, and indeed a different premise. I mean, it's still very much a car game, unlike the handheld, which is actually a brawler, but it's still a Batman game. You see, here we have to actually keep away from the Joker's cars, sit around too long and he'll ram us from behind, and apparently take out the fully armoured and equipped Batmobile in one knock. Simulating the angular streets of Gotham, we get tight bends rather than the sweeping curves, which is actually much better suited to the controls. Simply turn left or right at the correct time and you're on a new street. It's a pretty decent game, actually. Sometimes someone will attempt to fly kick your car. I have no idea what that's about. Other times you can just sail through, being careful not to lose points by hitting the sides of a street. If you die 3 times, the Joker appears at the bottom of the screen and shoots you, so that's nice. Now, this thing may be absolutely comical, and arguably the most ridiculous of the 3, but it's actually the most playable as well. And sure, this is all basic electronics, but it's still worth opening them up to find out what makes them tick. So, just let me talk about this video's sponsor, Brilliant, and we can get to it. Leaving these basic electronics aside for a second, have you ever wanted to learn how to build quantum algorithms from the ground up? Well, with Brilliant you can, with a quantum computer simulated in your browser. You'll learn which problems quantum algorithms can accelerate before putting homemade circuits to the test. I've been delving into it, and it's not only fascinating, but broken down into fun, interactive and easily digestible explorations. It's pretty impressive what you can accomplish. It's not the only journey you can embark on either. Brilliant shows you how to solve new and unfamiliar problems using critical reasoning skills. Maybe you want to understand machine learning or how search engines work. Well, with Brilliant you can do all this and a lot more. Go to brilliant.org/nostalgianerd to sign up for free, with the first 200 people getting 20% off their annual premium membership. Now, Afterburner has many screws, 9 in the bottom, which reveals a simple contact-based joystick. You won't find micro switches here, but then it gives a much more analog feel, so it kind of works in its favour. The back panel is in 2 sections, each with 6 screws. Over here we've got the speed control mechanism which connects up to this little PCB. The other side is where our speaker and damage LED are housed. That panel in the middle is simply the back of the artificial horizon. And up top, behind 4 more screws, we have our LCD screen and main circuit board. There's really not much going on here. The main processing chip is blobbed onto the underside, but down here we've got a simple flip-flop chip, which is used to store separate states, likely the input from the joystick. That other chip, I'm not entirely sure. It's in a DIP-18 package, likely some kind of controller chip. If we open up Outrun, which actually has far less screws, then we get a similar deal. A speaker over on the right hand side, mechanism for the gears over on the left, and a PCB smack bang in the middle. Again, the main processor is on the underside, and we've got a similar 18-pin chip to the left. Very similar to what you'd find in the handheld iterations, but with a few tweaks to allow for the sound and control differences. I'm not going to even bother taking apart the Batmobile, as it will be almost identical to this. But anyway, that's this trio of strange and unlikely LCD games. Loud, large and somewhat lifeless, but they don't half-pack an eyeful. A mug's eyeful, as you might say, if you were Alan Sugar, making cheap stereos that were made to look better with lots of fake knobs, switches and panels. Basically what Amstrad did for adults, Tiger did for kids. I don't know whether to commend them or berate them, but I'm sure they made a lot of money anyway. And I'm sure if you had one of these, you probably had a lot of fun playing it. You poor bastards. Thanks for watching, and have a great evening.